What's up? Let's wait. Let me start a timer here.
I'll watch your timer.
Cool. All right, let's rock and roll. What's up, Star Trek? How you doing? Good? Wake up. Come on. Everybody have coffee today? I haven't had coffee yet. Just water. I would like a beer. Somebody wants to go grab me one. Just kidding. So yeah, questions, they can go here. I will try to jump in Slack to answer all of them. Let's get it rocking and rolling. I wanted to show this off. This is a video I saw actually at one of the last conferences I was at from Apple, and it has to do with accessibility. So I figured I would show everybody here, and yeah, so let's get this kicked off with this.
People think that having a disability is a barrier. But that's not the way I see it. You can catch up with friends.
Ready?
You can capture a moment with your family. One face, small face, focus lock. And you can start the day bright and early. You can take a trip to somewhere new. You can concentrate on every word of a story.
A bird began to sing. Jack opened his eyes.
You can take the long way home. Or edit a film like this one. When technology is designed for everyone, it lets anyone do what they love, including me.
How powerful is that, right? I also like to talk about certain things in the accessibility world. Sometimes they have to do with digital accessibility, sometimes they don't. Just cool little things that I find out there. This right here, this is a tactile scanner. It was created by 6 engineers at MIT. And what this does is it translates written word into Braille through the use of optical character recognition software. It also uses Microsoft's computer vision API to translate that written word. So it's not really digital accessibility, but it's an accessibility win nonetheless. Thank you all for coming to see my talk this morning. I can't see. Low vision, A11y, and users. So this is a good representation of kind of how it is out there in the real world. There are 7 billion people around the world, give or take. 1.4 billion of them have some type of disability. So when you look at it, 20% of those people have some type of disability. Now 20% doesn't sound like a huge number, right? But when you look at it on the grander scale, 1.4 billion, I mean, that's a lot of people. And when I talk about this at work, or I talk about this at other companies or other meetups, and you might hear, oh, our users don't have disabilities, or our stuff's internal, right? We don't have internal users that have disabilities. Specifically in IT at my company, I work with developers who are colorblind. I work with a developer who's deaf in one ear. So these things do happen. So when you think about 20%, just don't think about it globally if you're building internally, because 20% of the people that you're working with have some type of disability. So you always have to keep that in mind. My name is Chris DeMars. You can catch me on Twitter at @saltinburnham. Where's my Supernatural fans? Do I have any Supernatural fans? Come on, put your hands up. There, how many? I can't barely see. A few? It's okay. I'm a Supernatural fan, but you don't have to be ashamed of it. You can go to chrisdemars.com. It's a little bit about me. I have a link on there with my Medium link to send you to my blog, some speaking stuff. So a little bit more about me. I'm an instructor assistant. volunteer. I speak for a Girl Develop in Ann Arbor. I also do a little bit, I've done a little bit with GDI Detroit. Anybody in GDI? Right? Where are my GDI people? All right, sweet. Yeah, so GDI is a great, great organization. If you haven't heard of and or have joined a chapter in your area, I suggest you do it. It's great, a lot of great people, a lot of great content, networking. I love it. I am also a Microsoft community contributor, working towards my Microsoft MVP. I also co-organize a couple user groups in Southeast Michigan. This is the Ann Arbor Accessibility Group, where I am a co-organizer. I also co-organize the Technology Mentorship Group of Southeast Michigan with a couple different people. And that's me. This was at La Dev, which is a female-focused user group. This was a few weeks ago. I was giving one of my accessibility talks there. I try to speak at as many meetups as I can or as time allows. I love being a part of that community. I also work on the accessibility documentation for RxJS with Jen Luker and a bunch of amazing developers. I love horror. Quickly, what's everybody's favorite horror movie? Shout it out right now. 1, 2, 3. VHS. What up? Come on. More. Wake up, people. Okay, sweet. Mine, if this works, you might be able to see it, maybe, right there. Original John Carpenter's Michael Myers. I am also addicted to tattoos, so if you want to talk to me about tattoos afterwards, come up and talk to me. We can talk about that. This great city right here is Detroit. This is where I live. If you want to talk about Detroit, come and talk to me. I also host my own front-end podcast called Tales from the Script. You can see I love horror. You can check that out, Twitter, TalesFTScript, or tftscript.com. I also have some business cards. If you have anything front-end focused you want to talk about, please come up and see me, get a hold of me. I'll put you on the podcast. I love putting friends on. I love putting people out there and then getting others to hear their passions. So why? Chris, why do you like accessibility? What kind of gets you? What makes you want to talk about it? What makes you want to get visibility around it? I get this question a lot. Usually after meetups, after talks, I get it. Sometimes I get it in Slack, sometimes I get it in Twitter. The reason I like accessibility so much is because it's important. It's very, very important. The web is huge, right? Everybody needs to be able to use the web or some type of digital accessibility. And the one thing that comes to mind the most is my mom. My mom uses a flip phone still. She wears glasses. She can barely turn things on. She can barely see well. I think about her. And if I can make things more accessible and have her have a better user experience with anything that she's doing, that's why I do it. So I always kind of go back to that mentality. Who's heard this before? I can't see that. Mostly everybody? Cool. So when they say, somebody says I can't see that, what do they mean? Do they mean that they really can't see it because of color or some type of disabled feature? Do they have some type of low vision impairment that would hinder them from observing what's on the screen? And if they do have a low vision impairment, what can we do to help them in aiding them to have a great user experience? Who's heard this term before? A11y. Okay. Half. Okay, sweet. Does anybody know what the combination of letters and numbers means? There you go. Specifically, this is called a numeronym. Yes, it's accessibility. What a numeronym is you take the first letter, you take the last letter, and then you count the letters in between. So you have A, 11 letters in between that and Y. You smash them together, you get A11y. You've probably seen this with like internationalization or localization. I18N, that's internationalization, that is a numeronym. Just a shortened version of the word. There's a lot of these in the industry, but like internationalization, localization, accessibility, those are like the main three. So, what is accessibility or what is A11y? What it really means, according to this definition from the W3, Web accessibility means that the people with disabilities can use the web. But you know what? I don't really like that definition too much. It kind of pulls on some strings that I don't like. This is an open web, right? Yeah? Good? And if open web means that it's an inclusive web, and an inclusive web means web for all, then this sounds a lot better. Web accessibility means that everyone can use the web. Every single person that uses the internet should be able to have a great experience whether they have a disability or not. But we have to pay very close attention to users with disabilities. This is another great quote that I got from webaim.org. It's the WebAIM website. The web is not a barrier to people with disabilities. It is the solution. That word right there, solution. It is our job as developers, designers, product owners, or anyone that has a hand in that web experience to come up with solutions. That's what we do. We come up with solutions. That being the case, we really, really, really have to keep accessibility in mind. Now, I love quotes. This one is from me specifically, and I say this all the time. Accessibility is not a requirement. It is a must. You never wait till the end to bake in security, do you? Why would you do such a thing? You have to treat accessibility the same way. And accessibility, believe it or not, it starts with design. There is no code. There's no pseudocode. There's no flowcharts. It all starts with design. Oh, I messed up my timer. There we go, cool. So when we talk about accessibility and users with disabilities, the first things that come to mind are users that are blind or users that are deaf. These are common tropes you hear. Oh, well, you're blind, that's a disability. That's why we have screen readers, right? But it's more complex than that. If I told you there was such thing as braille machines, which you kind of already saw with my opening slide, one of my opening slides, that help blind users read output from a monitor, you would be like, whoa, that's pretty sweet. I didn't know that was a thing. Or, for completely immobile users, we have such things as sip and puffs that are machines that work off of air pressure. So by blowing and sucking, sipping and puffing, you pair that with accessible software, they can interact with experiences like software and web. Being able to do that makes for great user experiences for users that might have not had that from the beginning or otherwise wasn't a thing. So we have users with hearing disabilities, such as conductive hearing loss, sensory neural hearing loss, and mixed hearing loss. We have users with cognitive disabilities, such as memory, problem solving, reading, verbal comprehension. We have mobility disabilities, like cerebral palsy, arthritis, MS. We have temporary and short-term disabilities, like a broken hand or a broken arm, even a single parent with a newborn child. That might not be something that you think of all the time, but if you've been in that position and you've had to use an experience on the web and you can't put your child down, how are you supposed to interact with what you have in front of you? But what I'm going to talk to you today about is vision disabilities, specifically low vision. So there's a 4-letter acronym that I want everybody to memorize: sleep, breathe, and eat. We should be basing our development efforts around these 4 main guiding principles of accessibility, and they are as follows. We have perceivable. Is the experience easily readable? Can I view images? Can I use a screen reader? We have operable. Can I just use a keyboard? Are the interactions easy? Are there timers on certain actions that might clear out a screen? We have understandable. Do I understand the language? Are there supplemental representations for the things I don't understand on the screen, like words and associated pictures? And then we have robust. Can the experience be viewed and used across a wide range of technologies? So out of the 4 letters that make up that acronym, the one we are going to focus on when it comes to low vision is perceivable. So just to make this point clear, kind of like how Java isn't JavaScript, poor vision does not mean low vision. Poor vision can be corrected with glasses or contacts. Low vision is caused by genetics or some type of eye disease. So let's talk about vision abilities and disabilities for a bit. Users with full use of their vision can make out all the things around them, culturally speaking. They know the difference between streetlights, red, green, and amber. They can read text and view images. They can make sense of symbolic and visual cues. And they can also perceive colors. Now, users with disabilities, on the other hand, they might not have that luxury. There are other ways of communication for visually disabled users. One big one being audio format. Usually that's afforded by the screen readers for your device, though. So I came here, and you came here, and I'm happy you all are here. I love this. I've never spoken in an environment like this or a venue like this. To learn and talk about low vision and accessibility. So let's get into the different types of low vision disabilities that we may encounter on our journey as web people that are working on the medium that we have, which is the web. So first on the list is color blindness or color vision deficiency, CVD for short. What is it? Good question. If you're colorblind, does that mean that you only see in shades of gray? Maybe. You hear that like, I don't know, how many like deer or hunt or do anything? You hear a lot of times that deer are colorblind. It's actually the opposite. So yeah, it's not just all shades of gray. Being colorblind doesn't mean you can't see every color. It means there's certain colors that you can't see, or colors that are representing other colors of that spectrum. Color vision deficiency is the inability to distinguish certain shades of color. So, how many people actually out there are colorblind? Specifically, I know I work with a handful of them at work. I've had interactions with them where we've been building software, building components and widgets, where I'm sitting with them and say we're building a graph, like a pie graph, and there's a couple different shades of red that are representing some type of piece of metric. And they've told me, Chris, I can't see the border between this and that, so we have to change those colors. They suffer from a CVD called deuteranopia, which I'll get into. 1 in 12 men are affected by some type of color blindness. 1 in 200 women are affected by some type of color blindness. Roughly, men and women. 6% to 94%. Now, I've asked this question before of why more men suffer from color blindness than women. From all of the research I've done, it's because the gene is passed down from the mom. So the mom is a carrier. I was reading a study in the UK last year about color blindness in the population, and come to find out there's more of a male population in the UK. So the majority of the people in the UK are colorblind, which is it's a weird fact, but that's just what the stats would say. So thanks, Mom. I appreciate that. I'm not colorblind, but yeah, I appreciate that, Mom. So what type of color vision deficiencies do users suffer from? So this is normal. This is what you would normally see if you weren't colorblind or had some type of CVD. We have deuteranopia, which is reduced sensitivity to green light, and it's the most common type of color vision deficiency. We have protanopia, which is a reduced sensitivity to red light. And last, but technically not least, we have tritanopia, which is a reduced sensitivity to blue light, and this type of CVD is extremely rare. But we do have one last type of color vision deficiency: monochromatic. Now, I know I said that color blindness does not mean people see in shades of gray. In general, most people don't see in shades of gray. But this type of CVD is more rare than tritanopia. Only 1 in 33,000 people suffer from monochromatic color vision deficiency. It's a big number. So we have another type of visual low vision disability, and it's called visual acuity. Now, when I say the words visual acuity, what comes to mind? Anybody? What was that? Okay. How about let's do like pop culture. If I say visual acuity, what comes to mind? You guys are all nerds and you don't know this? I bet this does. Right? Visual acuity is based on movement. He'll lose you if you don't move. I cannot be the nerdiest person at this conference right now. In this room. It's impossible. It's too early? Okay. So we all know what happens when you move, right? You end up like Gennaro. And that's not a good look. I sure wouldn't want to go out like that. So let's keep going on. So what is it? What is visual acuity? Another great question. I'm sure everybody has seen this before. This is a visual acuity distance chart, or a Snellen chart. A Snellen chart is used to determine the clarity of your vision at 20 feet. Now, a lot of people think they have 20/20 vision. But keep in mind, having 20/20 vision does not mean you have perfect vision. That's kind of a myth, I guess you could say. There are things that add to that would make you have perfect vision, such as your peripheral vision, whether or not you have a normal you can see colors normally. All these things kind of go into play as far as 20/20 vision is concerned. So we have different types of visual acuity that we recognize out there in the wild. We have 3 different types. And I should have said this prior to this. I'm just a developer. I'm not an optometrist. I'm not an ophthalmologist. So I just want to put that out there. We have spatial acuity. Spatial acuity is the ability to resolve 2 points in space. So point A to point B. We have temporal acuity. Temporal acuity means that it's having the ability to distinguish visual elements in time. A perfect example of this is TV, movies, video games. And a fun fact, in the days of early motion pictures, the projector wasn't fast enough for the eyes to see a continuous picture. Therefore, the person watching the picture saw the flicker on the film, and because of that, movies became known as flicks. Interesting stuff. Since we're in a movie theater, right? I didn't put 2 and 2 together, but that's pretty sweet. So yeah, fun fact. We have spectral acuity. What spectral acuity is, it's the ability to distinguish differences in wavelength and types of light. A couple examples of this are photographers who work in a darkroom. It's a lot easier to see things in red light. So you can see the crispness of the photo or crispness of the text. You see this with submarines a lot. When things are kind of going crazy, all the red lights come on. That way, the people in the sub, they can navigate their way through hallways and make sure they don't bust their head on things. So that's a type of spectral acuity. Acuity is science. Now, I could go down a rabbit hole with an explanation of acuity, but I couldn't tell you the difference between a rod and a cone and how they absorb light and turn that light into images that your brain can process, and then you see what's going on in the real world. So we're going to move on. We have contrast sensitivity. Contrast sensitivity is very, very important. When we talk about color contrast, we're talking about a person being able to distinguish something in the foreground compared to what is in the background. So how many have been in a situation like this? You're driving down a dark road in the city with barely any light, or you're driving a country road somewhere, and out of nowhere you see someone standing on the side of the road and trying to cross. Or maybe you see a deer, you see some type of animal. That could be an indicator that you have trouble with contrast at night. Now, I know this example is more in depth than talking about contrast on the web, but the principle is still the same. If the contrast is bad, you could end up hurting yourself or someone else or anything that is standing on the side of the road trying to cross. Just like with a web experience, if the color contrast of that experience does not meet the web content accessibility guidelines, then you'll end up hurting yourself. And you might feel like that. You'll be sad because you weren't thinking about accessibility from the beginning in the user experience. And to top it all off, you're going to hurt your user. And we're all here to advocate for our users. You could also hurt your company with something that I call a lawsuit. Now, just to throw this out there, this is from an article from the Safeworth Shaw website. It was titled 2017 Website Accessibility Lawsuit Recap, a tough year for businesses. Now, this right here is a huge number just from these states alone. That's almost 2.5 lawsuits a day in 1 year, just from these states. Florida has the biggest, well, one of the biggest at 325 and 335 for New York. Come to find out, I was talking to a product owner at work about this because I was showing him this slide a couple months ago. And he asked me, he said, why do you think the number is so huge in Florida and why the number is so huge in New York? I wrapped my head around it and I thought, like, damn, well, I don't know. What could it be? Well, if you think about it, Florida has an aged population, right? People who live up north and retire go to Florida. It only makes sense. Aging population in Florida, they might be suffering from some type of disability. They're having trouble using an accessible user experience. No wonder. The same thing with New York. Just the opposite, though. Nobody's retiring to New York, right? You're going to retire, you're going to go down somewhere nice. But the population in New York is huge. Bigger the population, the more people with disabilities. So that only makes sense. But this number, 814, it blew my mind when I saw this. I couldn't believe it. Ohio, you only got 8. Michigan, 1. Let's see. PR. Okay, Puerto Rico. Yeah. That's a crazy amount of numbers. I can't believe how bad Florida and New York were. So Mr. T thinks it's important, and I think you should too, and so does he. According to him, I pity the fool who doesn't think about accessibility from the beginning. Sorry, that was still too early, I'm sure, right? I'm just trying to make everybody laugh, have a good time, right? So what is a good color contrast? What makes for a good color contrast? In general, it's any color that can bounce off of another, kind of like my slides. Black text on a white background, easily discernible, easily able for the content to be read. Now, according to the new Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or the WCAG, the minimum contrast ratio to meet level AA requirements is 4.5 to 1. You have 3 levels of conformance that you should be meeting with all of your web experiences. Now, this is just for the W3. Federal 508 kind of models it off of that. Federal 508 is more or less for federal websites, financial institutions. What the W3 says for WCAG should be for everything. You have level A, you have level AA, you have level AAA. Now, everybody should meet level A. It's kind of like Web Dev 101, right? You have AA, or everybody should meet single A, I'm sorry. AA, you should strive to hit AA. The rules to hit AA are more than single A. AAA, you'll never hit. Don't even try. It's more or less financial and governmental websites strive to hit AAA. An example of hitting AAA is if you have a video of somebody giving a talk, there also needs to be an accompanying video of somebody doing sign language. That passes AAA. You also have to have captions. You have to have closed captions. You have to have a transcript. All of these things. So it's very, very robust to hit AAA. So you'll never get there. Even accessibility consultants will tell you you'll never get there. But always try to strive for AA. So this is one example of low contrast. We have a couple headings, some body text, 1.79 to 1, right there. Same thing with this one, and then 1.5 to 1. Anybody think this hits low the contrast? No, this will not hit contrast at all, because the background and the foreground colors will bleed together, and you're not going to be able to distinguish what those are. Here's one. This is one of my favorites. What's that, 9.91 to 1? Almost 20 to 1, 20 to 1, 12.94 to 1. Black background, white text, yellow headings, green. Green's my favorite color. That's why there's green. This passes because it's above and beyond AA. It'll probably pass AAA as well, but the ratios are different for AAA. They're a lot higher. So we have field of vision. This is the last type of low vision disabilities that I'm going to talk to you about. This is amazing. A QA I work with told me about this. I don't know if anybody's familiar with two blind brothers. These two brothers, it's not them, they're further down. They create clothing and stuff like that, and a lot of their proceeds go to raising awareness for users that are blind, or people that are blind. And this is really, really good. In the corner over here, you're going to see this simulator. What that does is that it puts this in the middle of that experience. This is what these two brothers suffer from. It's called Stargardt's disease. It's a type of field of vision, color vision deficiency. Field of vision disability. This is how they see things every day. They put this on here so you can see how they see. So you can see the importance of why accessibility for low vision users is important. Amazing stuff. So what is field of vision? Field of vision is the area that can be seen when the eyes are in a fixed position. So in this example, you have the line of sight, which is your fixation point. So if you just look straight ahead, you have upper peripheral, you have central vision, and lower peripheral. Remember how I was talking about how if you have 20/20 vision, that means you have perfect vision? All of this stuff also has to be in line with your distance and whether or not you suffer from some type of CVD. So if you suffer from field of vision impairment, it may be one of these three. Central, which is like you saw with the example from the Two Blind Brothers website. That's a type of central disability where you kind of just see right in the middle. You can't see everything in the middle, I'm sorry. And then the outside you can see. You have peripheral, where you can see everything in the middle, but the outside you can't see. And then you have a kind of a mixed, where it's just bits and pieces of your vision you can't see. So you kind of got to pick out certain things and move your eyes around to kind of get a picture of what you're looking at. So now that we know there's different types of low vision out there, we can focus on the problem. And it's a big, big problem. That's why I'm here. I'm going to talk about a few of the issues that we have. I could sit up here and talk about this stuff all day long. I'll be giving more conference talks around the country and actually in Winnipeg next month about low vision and focus and accessibility. But I only have you for an hour, and we got about almost 20-ish minutes left. So if you want to know more about low vision in particular, I would check out the spec, which is right here. I think they just switched it over to 2.1. It might be 2.0 still, but it all applies to 2.1. So first on the list is contrasting colors. That's a problem. All too many times, we're using the wrong colors. They might look cool to you. They might look cool to your designer. But functionally, they just don't work. You can see how this would fail. You have a white background, you have gray text. Contrast ratio for normal text fails AA and it fails AAA. Large text, though, it would pass AA and it would fail AAA. Now, large text is 14 pixels bold or 18 or higher, or anything in between that. If it's 14 non-bold, it's going to fail large text. And then normal is anything that's under 14. So if it were bigger, it passes, which it does, but it fails in normal size because it's under that contrast ratio. We have colors that just don't work at all. Now, I've heard from other users there are just some colors that just do not work. Like one of the developers I work with that was helping me build a graph. Let's say you have a legend of colors for some type of rating system, and it looks like that. And to the side, but not associated with those colors, is the meaning of those colors. So it's on you to memorize what those colors mean. Waiting is associated with red, and pushed is green, denied is yellow, passed is purple, and progress is blue. A user that's colorblind might have a lot of trouble with a system like this, especially if they're told changes to the status and to look at the color on the list, but they don't know what red looks like. They've never known what red looks like. This could cause a huge issue for someone who has a monochromatic color vision deficiency. Even now I can't remember which was red. I think the first one was red, right? But this can be a huge problem. So that leads me to the next problem, communication through colors. We as developers and designers, product owners, stakeholders, BAs, QAs, we cannot communicate through the use of color. Doing this poses another big problem. If you're going to use color to differentiate between things, try using some type of visual distinction as well. Icons and symbols can add great value because for the most part, they are universal. Using iconography helps to communicate things a lot better than colors, even using emoji if you're feeling a little crazy. A thumbs up for something good, everybody knows what a thumbs up means. A thumbs down for not so good. A warning that something might be broke or is in the process of being fixed. And then something like this for oh shit. Use that to put out fires or whenever something starts to break. This is another problem. Please don't do this. What if a user can't see the small text on devices like that? What if they want to zoom in on an image to see more detail? They're not going to be able to if you disable zoom, if you hijack their zoom. By restricting the user to a fixed state on a mobile device, they might not be able to have that full immersive experience of what you're trying to deliver. So if you see anything like this, it's bad. The min, max, user scalable attributes, those are restricting the zooming. So by removing them, the user will be able to zoom on that mobile device. Here's another one. Poor line height. That's a problem. It's true, line height does play a part in accessibility, especially when it comes to typography. This is an example of no line height on these 3 paragraphs. Now think about this for a minute. What if zoom was disabled, there was no line height, and the color contrast wasn't great? And to top it all off, you wanted to view this experience on a mobile device. It would pretty much be impossible, all because accessibility wasn't thought of from the beginning. Here's the same 3 paragraphs that have some line height on them. Clearly, this is way better than the no line height experience. If zoom were enabled, the color contrast might not still be great. This would still be possible to read on a mobile device if you didn't restrict the zoom. Poor typography. Now there's one main example out there that we all know. Everybody knows it. I'm not going to ask anybody to shout it out. Comic Sans. There's a star there for a reason, and I'll get into that. Conflicting typography is also bad. Don't mix a bunch of different types of font faces together. It's not good with anybody that has a disability. The star, though, for the Comic Sans, for normal users, nobody really wants to see that, especially when you start mixing that with other types of fonts. But there are studies out there that say Comic Sans or some type of italicized font is good for users with dyslexia. And dyslexia is a type of disability that we have to keep in mind. So always think about that as well. So we have solutions. We have ways of fixing these things. We have ways of not falling down into accessibility traps. So we can test colors like this with a tool from WebAIM called Wave. You can actually check your accessibility that way too. It's right on their website at the bottom of their page. You can also install a Chrome extension. It'll run an accessibility audit on whatever URL you give it, except local. There's also, like I said, there's a Chrome extension called Spectrum, which if I have a second, I can get into that. You can get it in the Chrome store. Now, I love Amazon, don't get me wrong. I just want to see how many URLs I could put in before I came up with one that had more than 10 errors. So the rest of the examples I'm going to use are all kind of based around Amazon. So I hope nobody from Amazon works here. If you do, we can talk later. So this is running the Wave extension on Amazon. So it'll point out errors, things you did right, color contrast errors, and how to fix them. This is one of my favorite tools. And I also have Axe-Core stickers up here, and I have Ann Arbor accessibility stickers as well. But I do have Axe-Core stickers up here. Axe-Core 3.0 by DQ. DQ is an accessibility consulting company. They build software, accessibility software for companies. They build testing frameworks and testing tools. Great company. Their HQ is based out of Virginia. They have an office in Ann Arbor, Michigan. What this is an automated accessibility testing engine that you can run in the browser or in any testing framework like Mocha, Jasmine, stuff like that. So this right here is running Axe. You can see you had a few different errors here, 56 violations, 41 of them need review. That's using the browser extension in the browser. They do make Chrome and Firefox extensions, so that's really cool. That's what I use. I use the CLI as well. That was created by Wilco Fierce. He works for DQ. He actually created the Axe-Core CLI, so if you like playing around in the terminal, you can do it there and you can run an audit and get some results. Like I was saying, you can run this in Mocha, you can run it in Jasmine, Selenium, Phantom.js. I think this one right here, this is running Axe in Amazon. Yeah, this is running the CLI in the terminal. There we go, sweet. So this will give you a rundown of most of the accessibility issues that you're going to have with your experience. The best way to get everything is manual testing. That's how you'll eventually try to find everything is using manual testing, but this is a good starting point. So this is a accessibility audit on a website we just launched at my work, findamortgagebroker.com. I worked on the accessibility of it, and I ran it through Axe previously a couple days ago, and I just want to double check on the experience since we launched it. 0 violations. I am super, super, super proud of that. That is huge, especially moving forward with the other experiences that we're building at work. I feel really, really, really good that I could create this experience, help build this experience, get accessibility in there, and come out with 0 violations, according to Axe, which is pretty much industry standard. If anybody uses Lighthouse, this is a really, really good tool. This is built into the Chrome DevTools. You can run audits using Lighthouse. Lighthouse uses Xcore for your accessibility audits. You can run an accessibility audit, performance audit, best practices, PWA audit. So yeah, if you're not using Lighthouse, please do. It's an amazing tool to run audits on your experiences and any other websites out there that you want to test. You have this that you can install in Chrome, the accessibility developer tools. This just runs regular audits. It's not as robust as Axe, but it can still tell you some errors, some things, some warnings. Choose readable typography. That's one of our solutions. Comic Sans, no, unless you're building for somebody that suffers from dyslexia. Arial is good. So like I was saying, the reason for the star is because there's a link between typography and dyslexia. There's studies out there that say Comic Sans is better for users with dyslexia. Arial was also on that list of fonts for users with dyslexia as well. Enable zoom by default. Don't hijack their zoom. This is findamortgagebroker.com. This is the mobile view. You would think, oh, it's mobile. We don't need to, it's already mobile. There's no reason for a user to zoom. No, that's BS. It still zooms, which is great. I love it. It looks nice. So I do have some takeaways. Use colors that work. Run websites through an audit or a testing tool. Choose proper typography. Leave Zoom alone. And before I end, I want to share this quote from a friend of mine. She's also a senior front-end engineer at DQ, Marcy Sutton. She speaks around the world on accessibility as well. Every little bit of accessibility you contribute is so appreciated and so needed. I have a bunch of resources and credits there. And that is pretty much my time. Thank you all for coming out. I will be here if anybody has any questions. That's it.